So, its ideal moveset being Water Psychic is probably Confusion and then Water Gun. And you'll have access to better moves as it evolves. That is Pokemon number 79 in the Pokedex Slowpoke.
No kidding. How
Yeah,
many
yeah.
how many Pokemon are there?
905.
Jesus Christ.
Well, you need to have a thorough understanding to really get this movie. Pokemon number 80 is Slowbro, the evolved form of Slowpoke. You'll be able to shift Confusion with Disable. That makes it so it can't use another move. But this is kind of moot because in a later generation, it actually becomes a poison type a little bit. So that's going to change around a bit. That's in Gen 7. We're still in Gen 1. So just like put a pin in that, all right?
Oh well.
All right, all right. I think you're about ready to watch the movie and discuss the Pokemon movie. We watched the Pokemon movie this week, kind of as a fun parallel to the Hasbro movies, because this was kind of my generation's Hasbro movie as one of many kids indoctrinated in the downright Pokemon cult of like 97. It was taking over the world. And my dad still relays the story to me that Pikachu was among my first words.
I was going to say, how old would you have been at the time of this movie?
Like one. I was
Oh,
born in
wow.
97 and I was like instantly a Pokemon kid. And to this day, I love Pokemon. It's probably just by sheer legacy, one of my favorite things. I'm looking at my retro Nintendo 64 in my living room, and I have Pokemon Puzzle League cartridge staring right back at me.
I mean, it was we cannot understate the enormity of the Pokemon craze in the late 90s. It was massive.
You could
Everybody
find
was into Pokemon.
you could find anything Pokemon in the 90s.
Oh,
I think
most definitely.
the Andrew Rannells of Book of Mormon and the Prom Broadway fame had an early role as James in Pokemon the musical.
Oh,
I'm not
wow.
even kidding.
There were, yeah, as you say, literally Pokemon everything. Like, I didn't really have, I wasn't massively into Pokemon um, very much. I did used to watch the show. I had like some of the cards. Weirdly, my
Mhm.
first exposure to this movie, I didn't watch this movie at the time because I didn't like Pokemon enough to go to a cinema and sit and watch it. Yeah, like I wasn't interested to that extent. But I did have a pack of trading cards from Pokemon the movie. And
Mhm.
I always remember it seeming really fascinating because the cards that I got were all of these really like dark moments from the film. Like
Uh-huh.
it was the scientists dying at the start.
Yeah.
One was of like Giovanni doing something like just before he gets blown up or whatever. They were all like really sort of dark scenes I just ended up with. And I was like, wow, the movie looks really intense compared to the show.
It
Um,
is surprisingly moody to the
yeah,
point that I'm a little surprised, like as a kid, I was just like into it. Like I don't think I ever questioned it.
it's I mean I don't remember a vast amount from the show, but I remember it
Mhm.
being fairly lightweight
Oh yeah.
and fairly repetitive. Like most of the episodes
Mhm.
were the same. Although I remember the masterpiece of an episode in which Meowth's backstory is explored and he learns to talk to impress a female Meowth who then rejects him for being a freak.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. That's a really good one. Man, I don't even know. There's a lot going on with this movie. I'm not really sure where to start, especially alongside a layman. Because like I hear the big complaints about this Pokemon is about this Pokemon. Oh, Pokemon, you're the only Pokemon who ever Pokemon. Sorry, the
Pokemon,
big
I
complaint.
choose you.
So like this, damned as I am to cite Doug Walker, but he kind of like perfectly sums up the issue with this movie where he watches like the first 5 minutes and just instantly questions, "I'm a scientist. Who are you? Why should I care about you? We're searching for a Pokemon. What's a Pokemon? Called Mewtwo. What's Mewtwo? It's a clone of Mew. What's Mew? Like, there's too many proper nouns they expect you to follow."
I I kind of disagree with that. I think if you're going into this movie, you're going to know the lore. I There is a lot going on in that first 5 minutes, but I think it sets it up reasonably well. But if you are
Mhm.
coming in and you've never watched it before, I think that's your own fault.
Yeah, exactly.
No
Like,
one
what are
to
you
blame
doing?
but yourself. Yeah. If you don't understand what's happening, then tough. Too bad. Because
Like, this isn't for you. Yeah.
if you don't understand what a Pokemon is and you saw the title of the movie and went Pokemon, then why did you go and see it?
Right.
So yeah, there is a lot crammed into this first 5 minutes, but I love that it kind of just starts as like a dark sci-fi film with a bunch of scientists
Mhm.
being murdered in a lab.
Oh, poor Dr. Fuji.
Is Professor
So let
Oak
me,
in this? Where's Professor
he's
Oak?
nowhere in this.
Why is
No.
he not in the movie? He's the only character I can remember. I I only remember him because of the Game Grumps thing where they're like, "My name is Professor Oak. It stands for oh ass crap," and for some reason that just stayed with me. Whenever I think of Pokemon, I just think of that.
I'm gonna cite the joke every single Pokemon fan makes and say that he was too busy railing Ash's mom to be bothered to be in this movie.
Of course.
That's what it's the lamest joke in the book, but it's still kind of funny to imagine just Professor Oak of all people. Oh man. Let me ask. The addition of this, because I kind of left you to your own device. I was like, this movie's easy enough to find. I'll leave you to your own devices to track it down. Um, Whatever edition you watched, did it include a scene of Mewtwo telepathically communicating with a young clone girl?
No, I don't think so.
Okay,
I have no
that is a
memory of it if
whole
it did.
no, yeah. So most editions of this film don't have that scene, and there's a bit of history there. There's kind of a piece of lore missing that 4Kids removed because it was a bit too upsetting.
Okay.
um, So the professor trying to create Mewtwo, he's so interested in clones because he's also trying to clone his dead daughter. Um,
Oh,
so we see in the lab, mention of this is cut, when Mewtwo is in the test tube and still asleep, we see he's also telepathically communicating with a clone of this young girl and they're friends. Like the only company they have is telepathically talking to each other while they're asleep in these tubes. And it kind of metaphysically is drawn in the film as them just floating in a void and enjoying each other's company. And you hear them mention in this film, oh, so many clones have died. What happens in the film is this clone girl does not make it. And the distress of this causes Mewtwo's psychic powers to flare uncontrollably. So they access his memories in the test tube and just wipe it. And this leaves him with a lot of his resentment and ennui. He never had a good experience with like anybody because they erased that memory of his only friend. And this sequence of events would have occurred in that prologue. And I think there's a finished dub version out there, maybe in like some deleted scenes featurette or an extended edition. But 4Kids ultimately cut it from the first and most broadly distributed version of this film for just being too damn upsetting. And a lot of people take issue with that piece of lore being missing because they feel it explains a lot about Mewtwo. But I feel to their credit, him resenting being a slave in creation is a pretty good motive on its own, I feel.
I think so. Yeah, I don't think you needed a needlessly complicated backstory to express that, but maybe I don't know. Maybe that would have added a lot to the characterization. I think he
Mm-hmm.
stands well enough on his own without that because I never would have looked at this and gone, "Oh, they've clearly cut some backstory here." I don't think that would ever
Right.
have occurred to me. So was this
Yeah. Did you?
was
Sorry.
this like in some cut of the film? Was it in like the theatrical cut and then they changed it when it was released to home video or something?
I think it never made it to, I think the other way around. They cut it from the theatrical version
Okay.
and there's home video extended versions with it included.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because the movie's already kind of a bummer, and I think they didn't want to make it even more upsetting.
It's certainly a different tone to the show, I think. It's much, I mean, I guess that's what you do when you have your big movie adaptation. You have to raise the
Mm-hmm.
stakes and make it a bit more dramatic. And
Yeah,
they certainly succeed in doing that, I think.
absolutely. What do you think of Mewtwo? I guess because we start from his point of view, I think he fucking whips ass. I like him a lot.
Yeah, he was interesting because he's a serious villain in the Pokemon universe. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
if you necessarily call him a villain. He's the villain of this film for the most part,
Yeah, yeah.
but a misunderstood tragic villain.
Mhm.
He's such a stark contrast to your usual Team Rocket people. Like, I don't think they could have been the villains of this film.
No.
I don't think that would have worked. And they're not. They're in it, but they're not the villains. And you have
Yeah.
the Giovanni, who I've never seen do anything in all the time I've ever watched this show. I
He's
remember his face just used to be hidden a lot in the series,
mhm.
and I was really excited to see what he looked like. And then when I got like the trading cards and it showed him, I was like, oh, that's boring. And I was just
Yeah.
really disappointed. It's
You think
just
he
some
might have like a
guy.
scar or something? Yeah.
Yeah, or he was going to be like, like a weird half Pokemon person or something strange about him. And it's just, he's just some guy in a suit.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I guess they were doing like a Blofeld parody type thing, weren't they? Because he's got the cat
Hmm.
and he's the head of this shadowy organization. So I get what they were
Yeah.
going for, but it's a bit of a
Hmm.
letdown.
I agree.
He's
I
also
do think
taken out like really early in the movie, and blown up. And I assumed he was dead, but I gathered that he comes back
he's
in.
fine after. Yeah.
He's fine,
He just
yeah.
runs off.
Okay.
Mhm.
And yeah, they just like he's just sidelined for the rest of the film, and I kept expecting him to come back, and he didn't. And you don't even get any Team Rocket see the footage of him supposedly being blown up, and they have no reaction to it whatsoever. And I
They
thought that
hate
was
him. Like,
strange.
they're
They
like,
don't even like it's like, oh, there's the boss. It's just like completely
mhm.
ignored.
Right. Yeah, that is a bit of a strange thing about this one. Giovanni gets like Giovanni, everyone remembers him, but no one really remembers what he does. The truth, he's a little more active in the games than the show.
Hmm.
He gets one pretty solid episode to himself that hints at Mewtwo and he battles Ash with his own Pokemon.
I
But I
remember
do
that one.
think, yeah, it's kind of a letdown, honestly. The build up to him, he's still like he's built to be the head of Team Rocket. I'm trying to. It is just bizarre to think about because for all my expertise of Pokemon, I'm like racking my brain for like whenever Giovanni has some kind of power play or payoff, but I just don't think they quite get to it.
Is he still alive in canon to this day? Has he ever done anything?
Yes.
Is he
Yeah.
Ash's secret father?
That's what everyone says. And it is like so weird to me.
Is that actually a true bit of canon? I'm just pulling that out of thin
No.
air. Oh, okay.
Everyone fan theorizes it, and I kind of don't get why.
Oh, okay. I was like, wow, have I stumbled upon something
No.
interesting? So he's got no relevance very much at all to anything then, by the sounds of it.
No. He's
I,
just the cause of because everyone loves the Team Rocket trio as they are, and they need someone to convince them to keep chasing Ash Ketchum. So that's what they keep doing.
do they ever get like another big villain in the Pokemon universe?
Yes. Yeah. As you know, every game has a different like evil team. Like after Team Rocket, there's Team Magma and Team Aqua and Team
Okay.
Plasma, and each one has a grand leader who's honestly more active than Giovanni and presents themselves as a bigger threat that the Team Rocket trio usually has to enemy mine to take down.
Okay.
Yeah. Um, man, so we're 2 minutes into this movie as far as explanation
Yeah,
goes. Boy, I feel like I almost want to like shift questions to you because I know this. I could like tell every phrase. I love this movie since I was a kid, and you mentioned earlier you maybe weren't like crazy about it. I almost want to shift like you into the hot seat and give me an excuse to just like because I could maybe dump about any frame of this film.
Wow. Yeah, I found it's an interesting. I said before we started recording, it's a strange film because
Mhm.
it's not quite like the TV series, and you understand. I understand there's like raised stakes and things, but I do find that there's for the first sort of 20 minutes, I really enjoyed it. Like it
Mhm.
builds up a lot of tension. It's got a more serious tone. There's things happening. And then the latter hour of the film is set entirely within the same room. And
Mhm.
it's just like Pokemon standing around for the most part. There's a
Yeah.
battle. And then there's not even really a battle because not much really happens. And then
It's not a
you
battle so much as Mewtwo whipping everybody's ass with like a flick of his wrist.
yeah, and then there's a harrowing scene in which Pikachu tries to wake up a fossilized Ash Ketchum by going
Mhm.
Pika, over and over again while everyone watches, absolutely distraught at this display. And then the movie ends and Mewtwo flies off into the distance with Mew. And I was like, that was
Yeah.
aggressively underwhelming.
Right.
Like the first half, it was really kind of ratcheting things up. And then the second half just failed to deliver for me. I think it needed more, I think more stuff needed to happen. I think once they get to that island and they're just stuck in that room and they have a debate about the finer points of the relationship between humanity and Pokemon, it's all good content, but it kind of like the movie just sort of stopped in its tracks.
So at the Citadel, it does get a little. I always found the details of the Citadel itself very cool. Like I have a very clear idea of what how his big old secret lab works, because like the pillars rise when all the Pokemon are getting kidnapped as like a floodgate, which also kind of an upsetting piece that always stuck out to me is just all of the trainers' Pokemon friends getting taken from them right before their very eyes by those evil black Pokeballs.
I love the who's the kid who's got the Gyarados Pokemon?
He's so a little piece of FYI, those three are not seen outside this film.
Okay. I assumed he was like a regular character in the show that they'd used
No.
for the movie. Oh, interesting.
No, if only. Ash meets 50 billion people per season, says we'll meet again someday, and never fucking sees them again.
Okay.
The young gentleman with the Gyarados is none of them are even named in the film, but promotional materials call him Fergus.
Fergus. Yeah. I love just what like a little snot-nosed little bastard Fergus was. When he's I flew here on my Gyarados. You have to be really well trained to fly a Gyarados. And Ash
Gyarados fucking rules, to be fair.
Yeah, Ash never rises to any of the taunts, and he's like, "Oh, hey man, that's cool." Like, there's never any. Is this smug little bastard? Like, he never like makes a comment to anybody. He's just like, "Oh, hey, cool," and that's it.
He's a lot more hot-headed actually in the show, now that you mention it. He seems just be happy to, I guess, like, to be recognized for his skill the way Mewtwo ostensibly had is enough for Ash to be in kind of a good mood.
Yeah, he's just happy to be there. I mean, my favorite character of the movie is undoubtedly Brock. And
he makes the dumbest comments every time.
I love his running gag where whenever he meets a woman, he doesn't really say anything, but whenever he sees a picture of a woman, he's like, "Hey, that woman's hot." Like, it happens like 3 times in a row.
When they see the hologram of the kidnapped Nurse Joy, I love just for some, his exact line is, "She's really small, but really pretty."
Yeah. Was he
Brock, she's not actually that small.
Yeah, I thought that was probably the joke. I didn't know if he was actually talking about her height, like, and it was just lost in translation or something. But yeah, that did make me laugh
completely.
Is the nurse celebrated recurring character Nurse Joy?
Yeah.
It is. Okay. I don't remember him saying her name because Brock's like, "Oh, she looks familiar." I was like, "Haven't you met her like 50,000 times before in the series?"
Well, it's kind of a weird meta thing. Like in the games, every single town you go to has a Pokemon Center because that's where you heal. And it's the same sprite of the nurse every time because, like, what else are you going to do? So in the anime, it's a gag where it's an identical nurse and an identical police officer in every town. And the first few times they meet them, they insist that they're all related.
Okay.
Right.
Confusing.
Yeah. So there's a billion Nurse Joys and a billion Officer Jennies who just live in every single town.
Oh, okay. So is that why he goes, "Oh, she looks familiar," because it just looks like the same person? I understand. The joke now makes sense.
Yeah.
I kind of laughed at it anyway. I don't know why.
Yeah.
I was just like, there's another 2 characters at the airport that really make me laugh as well, and one rattles off this mystical speech like, "It has been foretold that one day this Pokemon, the skies will open, and years ago Pokemon were destroyed by the storm. None can venture out there." And it goes to the other woman next to her, and she's like, "Anyway, the boats are all cancelled. It's like you got like this one
So that's
crazy person with like prophecies of doom, and then the other person just doing their job like a normal person.
yeah. So the person just doing her job, that's Officer Jenny. She's the other counterpart who's in every single town.
Okay.
The lady giving off the prophecies is called Miranda. She's also never seen again, despite seeming so portentous in this
Yeah.
film. They just, because she's the one who explains when all the Pokemon died, it was Pokemon Tears who brought them back. So it's connecting like the thinnest thread of logic to Ash getting brought back at the end
I
by the
see.
Pokemon Tears. And it's maybe the weakest aspect of this film, that the only lore we have is this random lady out of nowhere just saying what goes on.
Interesting.
Man, yeah. What did you think of another, I guess another bit, because Mewtwo's whole deal is he resents humans for subjugating him, and he resents Pokemon for allowing themselves to be subjugated. So
Hmm.
he's gonna clone all the Pokemon through a pretty, to the film's credit, kind of horrific manner.
Hmm.
And he's gonna take them all and he's gonna wipe out all the humanity in Pokemon as they are and start clean slate with his clones. This results in an all-out brawl between the Pokemon we quote unquote have and the clones, where Mewtwo intentionally turns off their powers, so no spit and fire, no electricity, and makes them all just like bruise each other hand to hand
Yeah.
in this brutal display that always stuck with me.
The two Pikachus are just slapping each other across the face
Oh,
for like 10 minutes. Oh my God.
no, it's not two Pikachu slapping each other. It's the clone Pikachu hitting the Ashes while Ash's Pikachu refuses to fight.
Oh, of course. Yes, it is. He doesn't fight back, does he? It's the
No,
Meowths that I think that are hitting each other back like repeatedly, like one after
no,
the other.
The Meowths have the poignant moment. So Psyduck are hitting each other because they're idiots. And, like you see, it's a great gag. Charizard is like biting each other in the neck, and Gyarados are like tackling each other to the ground, and the Psyducks are just like bitch slapping each other.
Yeah, that's it. I knew there was one. There was one that was just like repeatedly slapping the other.
Wham, Psy, wham.
Yeah.
The Meowths have like the Mahatma Gandhi moment where they're about to fight and realize neither of them want to.
Hmm.
And they have that, like, everyone quotes it as Meowth going, maybe if we looked at what was the same instead of what's different, well, who knows?
Meowth has some good stuff in this movie.
He's
He's
great.
I
Oh man.
like his when he gets dragged into the cloning machine and you get that whole
Mm-hmm.
example of but the Team Rocket stuff I think like, propels this movie forward because
Mm-hmm.
they give them stuff that could be really boring to watch the good guys explore. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, let's give this to the wacky comedic villain characters and
Oh, that's, yeah.
we'll let them explain the plot for us and it'll be more entertaining that way. And I think that was a good choice.
You kind of get to spare Ash and friends the trauma of watching Pokemon cloned in a test tube by giving it to Team Rocket because they can handle it. They're a little bit older and it's really funny.
Yeah. I like when they're trying to drag Meowth out of the machine and then he gets to see like the little Meowth in the tube. I
Oh.
got a fondness for this little guy or something he says when he sees him.
Yeah. Man, there's so many bits like I like this is like old school Pokemon dub. Like the rules were a little bit looser. And I noticed throughout this film, Team Rocket and a couple other characters will look at a Pokemon and get their name wrong. Like when the clones are shuffling through, they go, "Oh, there's Alakazam," and it's clearly Scyther. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?"
Oh,
And like it could be read today as, oh, it was a dubbing mistake or a rush script error or something like that. But it just reads to me as Team Rocket are silly enough to just not quite know their shit.
yeah,
And
yeah.
and I don't think that would happen in a dub today. Like if that's some footage you turned in, the regulations would come back and say you can't get the name wrong because it's a market, it'd be a marketing act. They don't draw attention to them getting the name wrong. It just I kind of buy it that they think Scyther is Alakazam for a second.
I think that's the better reading of it. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
they just don't really know their Pokemon that well because they're idiots.
Yeah. Yeah, it's small. It's I'm really nostalgic for this first generation of Pokemon because the Game Boy games were a bunch of squares on a screen, and there was plenty of lore. Like, it's impressive what the games pulled off, but the simplicity raises a lot of questions. Like, is there normal animals in this world? Do they eat Pokemon for meat? And those are questions that today, if you ask them, the Pokemon company's like, nope, you don't get to know. Nope, nope, that's not something you asked.
Okay.
Whereas this at least seems to kind of approach the question of like, can Pokemon die? Yes, we mention in lore that Pokemon were wiped out by a storm. Um, are there real animals among Pokemon? Yes, Jesse tells me out to pretend to be a catfish. Whereas that would be a total like, no, no, you don't get to know these days.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't realize they'd kind of drawn a line under. So is this show still going now?
Yes.
It is. Well, good heavens. I
It's
thought, I
much
thought it
more.
probably was.
Yes. It is much more squeaky clean. And I'm sure there's great qualities to the modern anime. They do some really cool animation stuff I've had the pleasure of observing.
Hmm.
But I do also get the impression they've drawn a hard line at these aren't questions you ask about the lore of Pokemon anymore. If we can't answer it logistically in the games,
Mhm.
then you're not going to get to know. Sorry.
Okay.
And that kind of, they've remade this movie. They've done a remake, a frame by frame remake of this film entirely in 3D CGI. And which sounds nightmarish, and it is, because they all look like plastic dolls. And let me just, and like, I haven't watched the whole remake because I'm like, I don't need to. I know this movie. And the CG models look ugly, to be blunt with you. But I've seen, that opening where Ash has that first battle to the Pokemon theme song.
Mhm.
Do you remember that part?
I do.
So that one gets recreated in the 3D. So I hope you can bear with me. In the movie we watched, the big Pikachu, where he shocks the 3 Pokemon at once. One of those Pokemon is Golem, which is a ground type. And in the games, that would never happen. Ground types can't be affected by electric attacks.
Mhm.
So they change it in the 3D remake to be a different Pokemon that Pikachu would hurt. And I feel like that's emblematic of the anime needing to be less an adaptation and more the game's animated. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
we can't ask those questions. We can't act like there's any wiggle room. Like, we have to make those changes in a way that's like the way Disney live action remakes are like responding directly to criticisms. For years and years, someone just decided to draw a ground type, getting shocked, and everyone lost their minds, and we have to change it.
Yeah, it seems very there seem to be sticklers for like detail and rules from what you're saying now. Like we must strictly adhere to the power levels of these Pokemon. We cannot afford to deviate from that. Whereas
Yeah.
this series just seems like a bunch of wacky occurrences, and it doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah. It's all good. Like the anime's an adaptation. It's like it kind of has the fun of filling in those blanks, but also coloring outside the lines a bit. And now it seems like the show has to be a guide on how to play the games. We can't show Pikachu being a ground type because it would confuse people who know the games. We can't have Team Rocket flub the name of a Pokemon because it would confuse people who play the games. And I do just kind of miss that looser spirit this older version of the show had.
So the new sort of continuing adventures of Pokemon, do they still have Ash as the main character?
Yes, and he is still 10 years old.
I was going to say, I wonder if things have changed, but no.
No.
That's a long running series. I'm amazed that it's still like incredibly popular. Like I know Pokemon is still popular, but
Yeah, I don't know what the reluctance is. I guess there have been because his supporting cast will change, and the Pokemon he carries with him will rotate in and out, but it'll always be him and Pikachu doing their thing. I think like Misty will get traded for a different girl now and then. And I think people who have made the show have commented like, boys like pretty girls, but you got to shift them out now and then. Give them some new eye candy. Oh man.
I'm surprised it's not like just a rock spin-off these days. And that's that's all there is. I think that would have gone down much better.
Actually, what that'd be great. Yeah. There was like a single season side series called Pokemon Chronicles, where it
Mhm.
was like a season of episodes, some of which feel like a Brock spinoff, a Team Rocket spinoff, or a Misty spinoff.
Okay.
Like, here's what they do without Ash. So that kind of exists, but not an entirely Brock spinoff.
Okay. Well, that sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
Was this followed up by more sequels, this movie?
Oh yes.
Is there
I
like a
think
direct sequel to this?
yeah, actually. You kind of follow up on where Mewtwo takes all the clones.
Okay.
I haven't seen that movie in ages. Mewtwo Returns is what it is called.
Ah, I think I remember that coming out at the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Uncut. So yeah, he runs off to the island, and I believe okay, yes, that one is about Giovanni coming back from Mewtwo, finding where he ran off to.
Ah, okay.
So it is kind of following up on that. So maybe that's like the actual climax as to Giovanni's big power play. Ash and friends are involved, which is funny because he erases all their memories at the end of this film.
Yeah, that was. I was going to mention that to you. That's a weird one. That's a strange way to. Why? Why does he erase their memories at the end of the film? There's no reason for it. It's not. If there was some sort of like cataclysmic alteration to the Pokemon canon, like they found out something they weren't meant to find out, or something was destroyed, or loads of Pokemon were killed, I can understand them doing a reset button thing. But there
Hmm.
doesn't seem to be any point to it. It just seems like he's literally just flows away and goes, "We will never speak of this again under penalty of torture," and then he just disappears.
Yeah, I guess maybe it would raise because they agree fighting is so wrong, but they want the anime series to continue.
Oh, I
So they
guess
like,
maybe, yeah.
which I think that's maybe a poor faith read because I've always read it like Pokemon fighting is sport and they can handle getting lit on fire and electrocuted, but it's not sport to make Charizard bite somebody else's neck. Like, that's different.
Yeah, it's yeah, they're not dueling to. It's not like a cockfighting ring, is it? It's
Yeah.
it's it's a strange way to end the movie. It
I
really is.
wonder because the weird thing about anime films is they often carry themselves as this needs to be optional viewing. Not everyone's going to get to the movie because it's not serialized with the cartoon. So we have to have kind of a backdoor out. With all the Dragon Ball films and a lot of Pokemon films, it's like we can't mention this villain again because if you didn't catch the movie, you'll be lost. So I wonder if that's just kind of their like, okay, hey, just in case you missed the movie, Ash doesn't quite remember it happening.
I remember I saw the movie sort of prequel episode where they hint at
Hmm.
Mewtwo, which I guess happens sometime between the events of the prologue and the main movie here.
Hmm.
And I
Yes,
always remember
yes.
seeing that and thinking, oh, I wonder where this is going. And I expected the next episode, like the next day, to follow up on it. And it didn't. And
Oh,
I
that,
never saw any of it again because I didn't see
yeah.
the movie. I had no idea. So I guess maybe you're right. Yeah.
I do think they're more accepting now of letting a movie because people will catch the movie. Like, and if you're gonna hint at it in the series, just like accept that it's part of it. I've seen a trend now with anime films, not necessarily Pokemon, just being willing to let stuff exist that's established in the films. If you need a blurb to say this is what happened, like Demon Slayer is an anime that did a film that was directly in canon, and they released the film in theaters, and it was a big hit. And they also just chopped up the film into 5 episodes that would air within the series. So
Okay.
that's just like alleviated. And I think that's more the way to go now. Whereas back in the day, there was a lot more concern with like, what if people don't know Mewtwo, which I found a bit silly, but I think that was ultimately the rationale.
Yeah, I know that's what they did with Transformers and GI Joe as well. Those were edited into like 5 parts and then
Hmm.
stuck in like standard airings of the show. So I mean, the best comparison I can think of to this, weirdly, is the X-Files movie,
Right.
which was that came out like after season 5 of the show, or
Hmm.
season 6, I forget which, and it was sandwiched between the two. But it stood on its own. Like it contributed to the overall mythology if you were a fan of the show. But if you weren't a fan of the show, you could go and see the movie, and you'd understand like kind of perfectly what was going on. And
I see.
I guess this is similar to that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I wouldn't recommend this to like a non-Pokemon fan. Um, yeah, in a similar sense. But I think I really like I personally just have a big like I think Mewtwo is just great. I kind of again, I just kind of like some of the questions it kind of fills in and answers. I'm very attached to just like the sound design of this film.
Hmm.
Like it's one of those things where if you watch it enough times, every weird like instrumental cue and crinkle like invokes a reaction in you. Like Mew's big pink bubble, like it makes these weird, like very satisfying little crinkly noises when he interacts with it. The little just music cues, Mewtwo's constant theme, the da na na na. It is
Yeah,
just one of those things that is just a weird corner of my brain that way.
it's very dramatic. The whole
Hmm.
tone of the movie and the music and the lighting and the way it's directed, it's, you know, like I said earlier, it's a very sort of serious film in many ways, and it doesn't dwell. Team Rocket are there for the comedy stuff, and no one else really
Hmm.
provides any light relief. Like if they hadn't been in the
Right.
movie, it would have been pretty dark.
Hmm.
And I don't know if that's what people wanted from a Pokemon movie, because there doesn't seem to be a vast amount of focus on. I know the movie is about the Pokemon, like in general. It's the Pokemon. The movie is about Pokemon
Right.
in general. Um,
Your favorite Pokemon gets like the tar beaten out of them in this film. That's what you were excited to see. Yeah, exactly.
there's not much focus on, I want to say, the Pokemon like as characters. I don't know if that necessarily makes sense, because they don't really have characterizations in
Hmm.
the broader sense, because they don't really
No,
say their own names. But I feel like
absolutely.
the show was very much focused on the personalities of the Pokemon and how they acted. And this isn't quite that. They're mostly all bit players in this, apart from Pikachu and Mewtwo.
Now that you mention it, you're exactly right. To the point that, in the anime there's maybe one or two episodes where the Pokemon get separated from their trainers and they communicate and there's subtitles. I
Oh,
don't know
okay.
if you remember that episode. And that's
Vaguely,
like, sorry.
vaguely. And now that you mention it, yeah.
I there was a bit of focus on Charizard. I've always loved Ash's Charizard as a character and how he's this very headstrong, hard to tame, strong Pokemon. And how that ends up it kind of shows that Mewtwo has a bit of a point. He directly comments, "Your Charizard is poorly trained."
Yeah, he
And
does.
the gag throughout the show is Charizard does not like listening to Ash. And then that's the price that ultimately gets paid, is that Ash watches his Charizard just get humiliated,
Yeah.
frankly. And it kind of makes you realize it's hard to argue with Mewtwo at that point.
He makes some good points, Mewtwo, I think. I would
Yeah.
mostly been on his side, apart from the, destruction of humanity thing. I think
Yeah,
he's, in many ways, he is the Globulus of this movie, because
yeah.
he's got an axe to grind with humanity. And he lures everyone to his secret mountain base. He's got some sort of weird cloning machine thing going on. It's parallels there, I think, to our
Yeah,
last movie based villains.
right. um you know and watching it, and like I said, as a kid I was never like, oh, this is darker than Pokemon as usual. I think I just liked it. Do you want to guess? So this was made on a budget of $5 million. Do you want to guess the box office?
I'm going to say 150 million.
You're not far off. 172 million.
Oh, wow. I thought it
So
probably did well.
yeah, and that's just the Wikipedia number. I don't know if that's only in Japan or all over the place.
Mhm.
Looks like that's only Japan's box office.
Oh, wow.
In America, it must have been huge. Oh, Jesus Christ. So
Yeah.
I'm looking at the Wikipedia article. So it has like the content block at the top of the article.
Mhm.
3, production. 4, themes. 5, marketing campaign. 6, 1999 Burger King promotion. 6.1, deaths.
Oh my God.
Was there anything else burningly we didn't get to before? I guess I was looking at the box office and I was wondering if anyone was like, oh, this is super different from the cartoon, but not everyone just seemed to accept it that this is maybe just a more serious chapter. And I think maybe that darkness made it a little more bearable for adults. I think I remember the audio commentary for this movie was they said that when Ash emerges from the smoke with all of the Pokemon that were kidnapped that he saved, it was like a big audience cheer moment for the premiere.
Okay. That's
So I
cool.
wonder if like that darker tone just invested adults even just enough to make this kind of a success.
Yeah, I think you need to go a bit darker when you do your big screen adaptation of a cartoon.
Yeah.
I think that's what we found with Transformers and G.I. Joe as well. Those were much darker movies. People dying left and right. Spores. There was a lot going on. Not so much the case with My Little Pony, the movie, but certainly with the other 3 we've watched so far.
Well, I almost wonder if like the fact it's like Transformers and G.I. Joe characters permanently dying and like getting these horrible, just getting these horrible deaths. Whereas like in this, it's like cute, endearing looking Pokemon get in these bad, and it makes you really root for them. Like, oh, thank God Wigglytuff is okay. All right, we're good. Like
there's bits of this that are like legitimately upsetting to watch, I think. Just yeah, it must have been. I would have thought this would have been kind of grim for kids, like younger kids watching this.
Yeah.
And I can see them being kind of upset by some of the events of the movie because it goes pretty sort of dour and depressing for a while, and the humor really sort of fades out of that last half hour.
Yeah, and I guess maybe that's another thing. Like the memory wipe is you're not traumatized by this anymore. It just happened once, Treehouse of Horror, and we're done here. Even though Mewtwo himself is still canon. Yeah.
Is Mewtwo still around to this day? Does he show up in stuff?
I'm gonna see when he most. I know he made appearances here and there after. I'm gonna see like when he most recently. I think there was eventually a second Mewtwo who was a girl, and Mewtwo. I wonder if this particular Mewtwo is like still.
There was like this girl Mewtwo these days. Oh no, the anti-woke mob won't like that. They'll be like, I can see the thumbnails now. Wokomon, Mewtwo is now a girl! Exclamation mark.
Strikes back. What? Oh, okay. So he took a very long leave of absence, but has just recently reappeared.
That makes it sound like he just voluntarily went, I am done with the show for a while. I will be taking a leave of absence.
Like, I think there was a season that had a lot of like Ted Danson episodes of Frasier where they pulled back an old character, and Mewtwo was one of them. So he's certainly not forgotten. He is in Super Smash Brothers as well. I feel like we come back to that one a lot. Oh man, Mewtwo just rules. I like him a lot.
That's cool. I'm glad he's not suffered the same fate as Globulus, who was who's been stricken from the records and like never spoken of again. Yeah, like let's not bring back Globulus.
Yeah.
Mewtwo is more the Unicron of this movie in that people seem to still really like the character, and he's brought in to up the stakes whenever they need him.
Can you imagine if Mewtwo was voiced by
Orson Welles?
Yeah.
Ash, what do you want? In the depths of your ignorance, what is it that you
want? Well, I think that about covers it. I appreciate you letting me just go completely rabid about Pokemon and Mewtwo. And since we watched all 3 Hasbro movies, I'm going to Google how many Pokemon movies are there.
Oh, no.
We're going to do it all in one episode.
I'd be interested.
Tune in next time where we review. Oh, I can't get a straight number. So The top paragraph of the Wikipedia article says the first 19 animated films are this, meaning there's more.
Oh, oh, good. I'd be interested. Good God, I'd be interested in watching Mewtwo Returns someday. Perhaps I want to see what the follow up is to this.
Yeah, that's one that's weirdly like I watched a ton of these as a kid. I guess among the hordes of DVDs my parents would buy me as a child that had Pokemon on them, Mewtwo Returns just was not among them. And I kind of don't know how good or bad that one is.
Okay, I was always more of a Digimon guy anyway.
I'm so mad we couldn't find a Digimon movie. If we like there's I guess they're ashamed of it. You can't even rent it. Like
I think
I
I
can't there's
remember
like
watching some of it at the time and being really disappointed that it was just like I just remember finding it kind of weird and like nothing like the show. Perhaps I
because
don't know if my memories are wrong of that or not.
it's no, that's correct because like it's just three OVAs put together.
Hmm.
And arguably they're more based on the games than the anime. And they're trying to like give the anime voices to a more direct adaptations of their video game selves. And it's fucking Mamoru Hosoda animating, and he's like his stuff is like so like heavily detailed. He's great at what he does, but his stuff is like his character he draws characters to be very malleable and very heavily detailed and active, which when you're used to Tai and Agumon being almost just slightly talking pictures in the cartoon, it's a bit jarring, I think.
I'd be interested to go back and revisit it, but I do remember disliking it when I tried to watch it. I think probably at the time or some years after.
It'd be super interesting to discuss because there is like they add like licensed music, like there's Funk Soul Brother during a big fight scene at one point. That
Oh
was
yeah,
not. You remember that? Did that like awaken a memory?
I think I do remember that. Yeah.
That was nowhere in the original OVA. And it's like applying some of the quirkier humor that the dub put in to like some of these darker places this OVA goes. And it ends up being this bizarre fucking I'd love to revisit it sometime too. But it was just I wasn't able to figure out where to watch it.
I'm sure I can track down a copy from somewhere.
Yeah, yeah.
By which I mean, of course, a VHS copy, not a pirated Blu-ray rip. Now then,
Nah.
one thing I forgot to mention,
Mm.
talking of music, the end credits of Pokemon. Just I've never seen so many songs crammed into such a short space of time. It was as
Yeah.
though everybody who contributed to the soundtrack wanted to be in the end credits, and they just segue from one song to the next.
Oh yeah.
It's just like 10 seconds of the one. It's like, no, on to the next one, quick, 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 quick. I was really surprised by how much original music they'd stuffed in there.
I know. It almost strikes me like they went a little overboard buying music. Like we want to make sure like they over prepared, like knowing we have a movie, we have the budget for licensed music.
Yeah.
Let's get like a lot. And they kind of ran out of space for appropriate songs. So they just crammed a ton into the credits.
Yeah, that was very much what it felt like. And they used some of it during the movie to
Mhm.
I don't know, kind of to good effect. But I think those original soundtracks are always going to sound a bit out of place in a movie.
Mhm.
Weirdly, not in Transformers because I think it was it was that one's like bizarrely fitting for that movie. But I've never seen another movie that uses the original soundtrack in like big action dramatic scenes
Mhm.
in an effective way. The only thing I've ever seen do that well is Transformers the movie.
I love that slightly more cinematic cover of the Pokemon theme song we got.
Oh yeah, that's pretty decent too.
You could do the Pokemon theme song on a kazoo, and I would like completely throw my ass in a circle over it. It's an all-time great.
Yeah, I like that. Did they change the? I remember that there was like a second intro after. Did they change the theme song up after the movie?
Yeah. Every time it's a new, like every time they make a new game, it's a new season of the show where Ash goes to that game's location, and that comes with a new intro.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it was shortly after this that we transitioned over to Johto.
Okay. I just in the world we must defend.
Pokemon, it's you and
And
me.
there's like the second one was like I just remember it being like to be a master, Pokemon
Pokemon
master.
Master. Okay, you're
Yes.
off that. Now that was that was part of Pikachu's jukebox. And
Okay.
that so they Pokemon was such a huge hit that they basically did a Simpsons Sing the Blues, a Pokemon themed album.
Okay.
And at the end of any time, so because sometimes they'd have to make cuts to an episode for American audiences, and anytime an episode came up a bit short, they would end it with a segment called Pikachu's Jukebox, where they'd edit clips to songs like those. And To Be a Master was one of them. That's To Be a Master, Pokemon Master.
Okay.
You may remember the Poke Rap. That's just the rap naming every single Pokemon.
I do not
Electro,
remember.
Diglett, Nidoran, Mankey, Ho-Ho, Magneton, Fidget, Pidgey. Gotta catch them all, gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all, gotta catch them
I
all.
do
Yeah,
remember that, yeah. I remember there was like a big, it's probably that Sing the Blues type thing that you're referencing where like Giovanni had like a villain song.
There's Double Trouble, the Team Rocket song that slaps to this day.
Yeah, that was
Giovanni has his own song in the musical.
Oh, is that it will all be mine till the end of time song?
I think so. That's
stuck
not
with
Double
me over the
Trouble.
years for some
That
reason.
I mean, I think it's kind of one of those where it's like if you just have an appreciation for villain songs, it's like this is silly, but I mean, kind of goes hard.
Yeah.
Double
music.
Trouble is just like a complete banger.
Yeah.
Well, hope you all enjoyed getting taken back to the 90s. I think that's enough Pokemon for one. I'll play you out. Team Rockets, rockin' trouble, double trouble, big trouble, gonna follow you. We're gonna capture Pikachu. Prepare for trouble, make it double. Prepare for trouble. Yep, that's the one. Who was it? Was it Dan Aykroyd? You put dancing in that one?
Oh, yeah.
Put that to Double Trouble or something.
Bring him back. Get Dan Aykroyd back on.
Doing a little dance to the fucking Witches Night Out theme, I think it was.
Yeah, that was it.
Yeah.
It's been a while since we had Dan. Roll the clip.
Trouble's gonna follow you. Team Rocket's rockin', talking trouble, walking trouble, double trouble, big trouble's gonna follow you. We're gonna capture Pikachu.